So, well, welcome again. And I want to start with a recap of what we have done so far, because this is our fourth session already. And I know that not all of you were able to make it to all the previous sessions that have taken place before. So to very briefly recap, we started this course on the 9th of November with some introduction. We got to know each other. We got to know the platform, also the Inclusive Schools project. We introduced it on the first day. And today, as a closing, we have Shan here with us, the author of the educational methodology of the Inclusive Schools project, that she will present in 1 minute. We discussed what inclusion was for us, and also we saw some theory regarding that. And that was it. Then the next Monday, we had two guests, Kike and Agnes. You should have their presentations, but if someone didn't receive the presentations from Kike and Agnes, please just let me know. You can always send me an email and I will forward them to you. We discussed about the links that exist between stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. We saw the concepts of privilege and oppression and how they interact in our daily lives and also education, and the concept of intersectionality too. And then with Agnes, we also explored the universal design approach, that it's a very, very big topic, and she left us many resources to check at home. Also the difference between the medical and the social models, and some tips and tricks to be more inclusive in our educational practices. Then last week we started applying what we had learned, applying inclusion in education, and for that we also had Shan with a very inspiring, I would say, presentation on policy, practice, and culture, and how to organize change in education to make it more inclusive. We shared our best practices, and we started imagining our ideal inclusive school. Today, we're going to look forward. So the aim is, first of all, for Shan to present the methodology of the Inclusive Schools project, so that after this training, you have a very concrete tool that you can use in your classroom, with your peers, or in your school, or in your community. So the idea is that you leave this training knowing how to use the tools that the Inclusive Schools project offers to you. Then we will go very briefly to what an inclusion ambassador is. That is something we started last week, but we didn't really have the time. And then we will work on future actions. Today is the starting point of the action plans, or of the future actions that you will carry out. But as you can see here in the presentation, next Monday there is still another session that is optional for you to get some mentoring, to get more in-depth feedback of your idea, of your action plan. If you have questions that you're a bit stuck, you don't know where to start from, etc., etc., you will be able to have this chance, this extra session, to share with other people and also with us your idea or your project and get feedback on it. So I think, yeah, that's it for now from my side. And I want to give the word to Shan Williams to start with the presentation.
Maria has given me the lovely task of introducing you to the Inschool Education Resources Pack today. I think you probably won't leave this session knowing exactly how to use the tool, because that would need a longer session. But what I want to do is just introduce you to it, really, and give you an idea of what's in there, with the biggest perspective focusing on you as individuals. Because the first thing to say about the tool is that it is mostly designed for whole school change. That's what the job of it was. But there is a hell of a lot in it that you as individuals can go away and use yourselves. So that's what I'm going to focus on this afternoon. I'm going to start just by giving you just a little bit of background, which will be kind of revision of things that you talked about over the last few weeks. That was the background to the pack, the origins of the pack, and then we'll have a look at what's in the pack itself. So you'll have come across lots of these things before. This is the kind of drivers for the pack, the origins of where the pack has come from. So things like the things that mean that inclusion for all children is a fundamental human right. So you've got the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the 1994 Salamanca Statement, which was the first piece of kind of global thinking about children's special education needs and disabilities. Everybody knows we're working on the SDGs at the moment, so those are in there. This is where it's all coming from, and then the European values as well as enshrining these things here. The European Convention on Human Rights and the European Social Charter, they enshrine the right to education for all children as well. And then that one of the bottom right down there is the Paris Declaration of 2015, which is really important because it brought everybody together after a series of kind of terrorist attacks that happened, and reasserted the thinking in Europe about how we promote European values within the education system, which cross over very much with some of the inclusive values, some of which you can see there. You can follow those up. If you don't know the Index for Inclusion, which is cited there, that's also really worth a look as a kind of reading. And there are the old versions are free to download on the internet. So do have a look at that as well. So that's kind of the origins. And you may have seen this cartoon in the work that you've done previously. So thinking about shifting from equality of opportunity there on the left, where it looks fair because everybody's given the same thing, to making our thinking more about, okay, what do we actually need to do to make things equitable? We need to give people what they actually need to make sure that they have the same chances. And by doing that, on the right there, we are trying all the time to take away barriers within the classroom and within schools. So that's access, and also when children get into school, into classrooms, what we do with them to engage them. And we also wanted to stimulate some thinking, because all of this starts with the adults in the school. Because if you don't change as adults and as role model students, then other people won't change around you. So we really wanted to get people to try and shift their thinking away from this, which is called the bell curve. And we're really stuck in this in education. The whole, what I talked about last week about the tension between academic standards and what's good for an individual child. Here you can see we've got this idea of an average person, and it means that if some people are average, then some people must be different, and it's quite likely that, as you can see, like in this graph here, the bell curve, those people get kind of pushed to the sides. So try and shift people's idea from this bell curve thinking to something that is it's a lot richer, a lot more messy, but something that affirms diversity. And just, it's here, diversity is here, it's never going to go away. But we need to be, our new kind of, not new, but our thinking needs to be that the normality of the classroom is different and everybody is different. And we can't teach to the average. And I know you've seen this before, just to bring it back again, the way to do that is to get people to think much in a social model way of thinking. So that it's actually their responsibility to take away barriers to learning rather than the responsibility of somebody else to give a child to and say, hey, fix this one and bring it back, please, when it's average enough for me to teach. So to really, the social model of disability can be really transformative in getting people to think about the way they run their classrooms. So that was kind of getting people to think about that. And also within that, because we know it can be overwhelming, to really take people on the first steps of a journey, because we all know that this really is not something that has an end. Every bit that you do is just a step along the way. And it always changes, because a child is a child is a child, and you know, one passes through and there'll be another one along in a minute, that's completely different and needs something completely different. So we know that it's a never-ending journey. And what we like to think about in the British Council is that it's not an all or nothing thing. What we're aiming at is including more children for more of the time, all the time. So just taking one step forward in that at a time. So the design of the toolkit is twofold: to help along this journey, to help people start this journey. There's a tool for schools, and that's 5 phases, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then there's also a set of classroom activities. In fact, there are 2 sets. There's one for 9 to 11-year-olds, and there's one for 12 to 15-year-olds. We'd have liked to have gone younger, but you know, the resources were limited. And the classroom activities can be standalone. You can flow through the activities. There are 6 activities in each kind of module. You've got things like understanding diversity, understanding inclusion, making things happen. So there's a kind of action planning sequence one for children as well. And then they reflect on what they've been doing, and then they get to plan ahead as well. So you can see those green arrows there. The classroom activities and the tool for schools, they really do hang together. But the idea of them is that in your school, you can use each in a totally kind of flexible way. So there's students, and there's an enormous amount for staff to be working on themselves as well. So obviously, as individuals, it's really easy for you to dip into the classroom activities and choose classroom activities that you think, oh yeah, I could try that. That would be, you know, good with this class here. And, you know, so just dip into those as you want. You may have to adapt them for physical distancing in your classroom, obviously, because they were written pre-COVID. And there's no technology involved in them at all. So they're pretty off the peg. I'll talk about them a bit more in detail. So let's go back to, here we go. Just there's a bit more detail here. So those are the 5 phases of the tool for schools, which I'll talk about. And here you've got your classroom activities. Go understanding diversity, understanding inclusion, inclusive values again. So bringing back those values for everybody, and they also appear in the tool for schools too. And then looking just to do something now in this year, and then looking further ahead. So let's just have a look at the 5 phases in the tool for schools, just as a quick overview. Phase 1 is getting started. This is when, if you're doing it as a big project, it all gets set up. The people who are involved are recruited. And this is where the school does its thinking. So it goes to its values and back to the kind of mission it wants to make around inclusion, and starts to look at what's going on in the school. There are some questionnaires in there for people. There's CPD, so everybody can do the kind of thinking that you have been doing over the last few weeks. And then at the end of that, the school can kind of look at where it's got to in terms of deciding on some priorities to work on. And we you know, choose 1, 2 or 3, but don't go mad. Just keep it small and keep it something that's doable. And then once schools got those priorities, then they can deep dive into them and have a really good look at what's going on in those priority areas. So say, for example, somebody spots that there's an issue going on at, during break times. A lot of children are not included in what's going on at break times. Then you can have a look and see what's going on about that. observe the playground, ask the children what's going on, speak to teachers who are doing break duty, anything like that to find out what's going on. And then once you've got that, you move to phase 3, which is to make a plan, to do something about it. And then phase 4 is making that plan happen. And part of phase 4, if you do the whole project as a big thing, is that there is something called Inclusion Week, which is a kind of big festival, really, of inclusion that the school can get together. And then looking back and evaluating what's been happening. The evaluation is built in throughout. It's light touch. It's not mad. It's not too bad. But it's a kind of ritual to learn from each phase as you go through. But then phase 5 is really kind of to look back and see, okay, what have we learned? Where do we want to go? What's our vision? Not doing like this, where somebody says, woohoo, right, that's my vision, and everybody were doing this in a really collaborative way, including students, including other people, as well as staff, so people that visit the school, parents, all that kind of thing. What do we want to work on next? What's our vision for inclusion? So that's if you're doing it as a big whole school project. But let's really focus now on what's in it for you as individuals, because that's what you're going to be most interested in. Because I really want you to be able to dip into this. It's all free access online, and I'll show you where to go to get it. What can you get out of it as an individual or somebody that might be working in a small group in your school? Well, in phase 1, there's a whole load of the kind of theory and theoretical models that we've talked about over the last few weeks. So you can there see at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, there's your culture policy practice that we looked at last week. There's what is inclusion, what isn't inclusion. We looked a little bit last week as well, bottom right, about knowing, doing and believing. So all of that is in there as well. So it's kind of a reference tool for you. And I just want to talk a bit more about that pizza. This is something that is explored much more. This is about different things you can practice in the classroom, different pedagogical tools, ways of teaching, and ways of being in your classroom that you can practice. So this pizza here is explored in a lot more detail in something called Teaching for All South Africa, which is a really, really huge resource. It's also totally free and online. And it goes through each of those slices of the pizza and will give you some ideas about how to use them and some activities to start to think about how you might use them. You may want to go off and have a look at that, because that is a really good way of starting to explore some practical stuff you can do in the classroom to experiment. So all of that is in the phase 1 materials, as well as a whole load of questionnaires. Now, the questionnaires are designed to use for whole staff, and they're designed in three areas: policy, practice, culture, like we discussed last week. So I would just encourage you, for your own practice, to have a look at them and have a look at some of the practice ones. And instead of where it says staff know about, just change it to, well, do I know about practice effective classroom organisation, for example? Have I got a sound knowledge of what children need to learn and when and how they learn? And just use it for yourself and your classroom or your setting, however you're working. You know, is my classroom run as an inclusive community? Do I value everybody's input? So it's just a really good kind of self-checking way, and it's got some nice questions in there. It's quite big, so don't feel like you need to do all of it. Just pick out the things that are really relevant for you. Okay, so that's also in phase 1. And then phase 3, if you want to make a plan about what you want to do, there's some very simple action planning templates in there. And there's one for adults that you can see there on the left. And there's also one that you can use with children. If you want to do some work with some students in a class and get them to actually make some plans themselves, once you've done some thinking with them through the classroom activities, there's an action plan in there in phase 3. Okay, that's in the tool for schools. If you keep scrolling through, when you get to look at the resource, After the tool, you'll find the classroom activities. So I'll just talk about those a little bit more. So it's very simple, as you'll see here. Each one is set up exactly like in this pattern. So you get the title at the top, the time it's going to take you, what it is as an overview, what its objectives are, how you need to organise the classroom, and what resources you need. And then that's in the first box. And then in the instructions, you get detailed instructions of ask the children to do this, tell them to do that, then do this. It's all meant to be as simple as possible. There are 6 activities in each of the kind of modules, and you can do 1 to 6, or you can just look at them and say, actually, I fancy doing number 3, and that's fine too. And yeah, it'll tell you exactly what resources you need, and it will also, quite a lot of the time, give you some of the resources that you need. So you don't need to create your own, you can just print out what's there. So we try to make them as easy as possible for you to use. Have a look at, you know, when you want to make a plan for what you want to do, you know, maybe marry up and match what you want to do, and find some classroom activities to do with your class that match the areas that you want to work on, and work on it together. Make it a joint project, you know, play with it, be creative, because, you know, you are the experts in your own setting and you know how this is going to work for you. What we wanted you to do was make sure that you can use it flexibly. It's not there to be followed slavishly from the beginning to the end. We do want you to pick and choose which bits are most helpful to you, and we do want you to adapt them to suit your context. If you're a whiz kid with computers, then for goodness sake, make it technical. But if you're in a situation where, you know, you've not got access to tech, then, you know, don't. It's absolutely up to you. If you have a class of 12 to 15-year-olds who are not as mature as you think perhaps you'd like your 12 to 15-year-old to be, have a look at the 9 to 11 materials. They follow exactly the same themes, but they're a bit simpler. So it's not there, it just use it as you want it, as long as you make sure that everything that you're doing is underpinned by you using your own inclusive values. Its aim is to make your classroom more inclusive, or the work that you do in your setting more inclusive, and that you do it inclusively, so that you are practicing and putting those values into place as you do it. And if you remember this, I love this quote, that we're not here to train the workforce, okay? Our job in education is to enable human flourishing. If you do this work with this in mind all of the time, then you're not going to go far wrong if you've got that in your heart when you're doing it. So just have some fun with it, with this in mind, and just keep those inclusive values as you're doing it. So this is where you can find it. If you're on any search engine, if you just search for Education Pack in School, you should find it. That there is the link. If you you get these slides, so you'll get this, and it's inclusiveschools.net. All free, it's all downloadable, and I hope that you use it and get something out of it. And now I will be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very deep, but at the same time quick presentation of the Inschool Edu Pack.
Just one thing I should have said is that it's translated into several languages, the whole pack.
That's a very good point. If I remember correctly, I think at the moment in the webpage you can find it in Spanish, Greek, Polish, French. And then it's being translated at the moment into Dutch, German, and Serbian.
And Italian.
True. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Irene. As I wrote also in the chat, I will send you the pack in my follow-up email so that you will be able to check it, to download it, as Shan explained. You will be able to find there, I would say, almost all the theory that we've seen throughout these sessions. So if you want to support your learning with another document, that is the document to check. Now we're going to reflect on what an inclusion ambassador is, which is something we started very briefly doing last week, but we didn't have time. So I will send you in the chat. You have a link to a mural. As always, the mural has two parts. So you should check the part on the left, which is where you can see written inclusion ambassadors. So this is what we're going to be doing now. I see some people already there. So yeah, this is going to be a very quick brainstorming. So as you can see, yeah, on the left, there's the inclusion ambassadors written in pretty big letters. And you can see two columns, one that says competencies and one that says values. So what we want to do now is individually, I will try to play a song and we will brainstorm while the song lasts on what are the competencies and values that make an inclusion ambassador a good one. It can be competencies that or values that you already have, or it can be competencies or values that you maybe don't have yet, but you want to work on, or that you're working on, and so on. Competencies is any knowledge, skills, or attitudes that you consider that an inclusion ambassador needs to have. It can be, for example, in knowledge. It can be knowledge on what inclusion is. It's a very random example. Competence can be active listening. Yeah, attitude, it can be willing to learn, for example. And then values are beliefs. They are motives that we have behind our actions. Some inclusion values were shown before in Shan's presentation, so that you can get some inspiration there. So you have, as always, on the left of the screen of the mural, you have the option to take post-its, and feel free to take as many post-its as you want, and to add the competencies and the values of an ideal inclusion ambassador. So how do you imagine this person? It can be a student, it can be a teacher, it can be a headmaster, it can be anyone from the school community. Which competencies and values do they need to have in order to have the mission to promote inclusion and to make their school more inclusive? Okay, I see some post-its already going on. So I will play a song, and then you can brainstorm during the time that song sounds, and when the music stops, then the brainstorming stops. Okay, so the song is over, which means the brainstorming is over too. I will go through the post-its that you wrote there. So some of the competencies that we have here are to be an education designer. Okay. I think this brings together a lot of competencies at the same time. Policymaker, or I guess also knowing policy making. That's very interesting, and that also entails a lot of different competencies. Research-based learning, very good too. Knowledge to promote positive learning. Decision-making, planning, being proactive, teaching by doing, I really like that. Opportunity generator, very good. I see people are still, oh, I missed one, communication, yeah. And to be trained, I guess to be trained on inclusion and inclusive education. Okay, we move on to values. Some of the values that you mentioned, like inclusive values, are empathy, again, communication, understanding, respect, democratic values, respect, altruism, generosity, everyday discoveries. That's very nice. Embracing, tolerance, kindness, respect, and acceptance. Thank you very much. Again, if you want to still contribute to the mural, it's open for you to do so. Okay, some people cannot work on the mural. Again, if you cannot write on mural, just write on the chat. And now I want to share again. I'm really happy because today, so far, it seems that we're doing good with timing. So now we're going to move on, as I mentioned before, to thinking our follow-up actions. Again, today it's going to be only the starting point of our inclusion journey, or maybe you have started your inclusion journey from before, and then you will just continue it. If you want to develop your ideas further or to get feedback, remember that next Monday at 5 CET, we will be doing a mentoring session for your action plans. So today it will be just the starting point again. So before we start working on our ideas, I wanted to give some small bits and also to remind you some things that we have seen throughout the course. This is also from the education index, what is inclusion in education. So some reflection points are viewing every life and every person as equal worth. Also supporting everyone to feel they belong. The feeling of belonging was something that we commented last week when we imagined our ideal school. So our ideal school was like we would feel like we all belong to that school. Increasing participation, so enabling and allowing and encouraging everyone to participate. Reducing exclusion, discrimination, and barriers. As it's been mentioned several times, let's keep the focus on the barriers and on tearing down the barriers and the obstacles for inclusion instead of trying to change people, keeping in mind social model again. Restructuring cultures, policies, and practice to respond to diversity. So again, the concepts of culture, policy, and practice. Linking education to local and global entities. Viewing differences as resources for learning, so we can all learn from each other and everyone can contribute for everyone's learning. So acknowledging diversity in order to foster inclusion too. Acknowledging the right to children to a quality education, which is, again, as it's been mentioned by Shan, every single child has the right to quality education. Developing school communities too, so also working with school communities, with different stakeholders, with different actors. Fostering and sustaining the relations among them. And then the last one is recognizing that inclusion in education is one aspect of inclusion in society and a very important one. So education is part of society, and to achieve inclusion in society, we need to also work on inclusion in education. So this is some reflection points before moving to our actions. I want to also remind some concepts that I would, this is just a recommendation to keep in mind for the future actions, which is to keep in mind engagement. So the act of being involved in or participating in learning, involving students, involving all students, involving like the diversity of school community in education. Keeping in mind, again, this graphic of equality, equity, and justice. being this last justice model, the one that tears down barriers and overcomes obstacles. And school stakeholder, which is something that I mentioned before. So a school stakeholder is anyone with a vested interest in school and how it functions, such as staff, students, parents, governors, and others who have a regular role within the school. So I would also encourage you to think, if you're a teacher, for example, not to think only of teachers, but how can you involve students? How can you involve parents? How can you involve policymakers? How can you involve staff? If you're a student, how can you work with teachers? How can you work with parents, etc., etc. And here we go to the exercise. So as you can see in the link to mural in the right part, so the second half, you have different rectangles. And on the first rectangle, you can see the question, what do you want to change? So what is the barrier that you want to tear down? What is the obstacle you want to overcome? What do you want to change in there? So you will have time to add a post-it with your idea. And then there are other 3 rectangles down there which ask you different questions, which is, how will you walk towards that change? So how will you achieve it? And so what are you going to do to achieve this change that you want to make tomorrow? So what is the first step that you're going to take? Maybe not tomorrow, but this week, let's say. What are you going to do in 2 months to achieve your goal? 2 months is after it's end of January. So it's after the winter break, after exams, after evaluations, and so on. And in 6 months, and it's before the end of the school year. So we are trying to think a bit still within this school year, but how are you going to make, what do you want to change? And which are the 3 steps that you're going to take in the upcoming months and during this school year to achieve that change? So we're going to have, I know it's not a lot of time, but we're going to have around 10 minutes for individual reflection, and then you will share in groups your ideas. So I will play some music, and you will, while the music lasts, you will be able to go through the mural and to think about it and to answer the questions. And then once the music stops, then I will divide you into different groups and you will be able to share. So the time is over now. I see some people are still writing. You can continue writing if you want to. That's totally okay. So if someone wants to share their ideas, their plan, and what they have been working on, the floor is yours. You can just unmute yourself and go for it. I will go through the comments, and again, feel free to add your ideas, opinions, or if anyone wants to present their idea, that would be really nice for the whole group. So what are the things that you want to change? So we have, I want to change and to format the values mentality. So I guess like to change the values of the school. Accessibility and equity, that's a very big aim. View of the other and ways to connect. Change behaviors and affect. Yes?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm Irene Ranieri. I work in a private school, a well-known private school located in Athens. The name of the school is Kesaris. I'm really happy to participate in this online course, this online training for the inclusion ambassadors. We're currently planning an inclusion week whose title is The Younger Student, and there is also a subtitle which is Shaking Hands with a Clenched Fist. It's all about strategies to cope with stress, anxiety, problematic behaviors in the classroom. And the key idea behind this is that students facing anger issues should be seen as individuals who deserve quality in learning, compassion, trust, and support to feel that they belong to the school community. So this is the key idea behind the Inclusion Week we're currently planning. There's a lead person. The lead person is the psychology of our school, and who is Mrs. Katerina Hodzoglu. And there's always a critical friend. Okay, the critical friend is in this department, and there's a core group which consists of fourth grade and second grade primary students, plus teaching staff and head teachers. So generally speaking, there's going to be a number of warm-up meetings with psychology and the critical friend and the teachers of the school. There's going to be a post-evaluation meeting with the teacher and the students and the staff. And in the meantime, there's going to be a number of topics to be discussed with the students, such as what are the emotions, where are they created, the role of the brain, how emotion changes according to how we feel and how we react in the classroom. There's going to be role play games, a number of role play games, as well as experiential exercises. And this is what we're currently planning as a school. And I hope that you find it interesting. Thank you very much.
That's very nice, Irene. I think I haven't seen it in the mural document, and I think it would be very useful for all the participants to actually, if you can actually write that down. In the mural, I've just shared the link again on the chat, so you can write everything there to maybe inspire others. And thank you very much for sharing. I will go briefly through the rest of the ideas, and then we will start closing. So some of the actions that you will start doing tomorrow are to change behaviors, to take decisions, very important, train and research plan, to learn peers of children with SEN, not regret but understand. I'm not super sure I understand fully this. I can research about it later. To promote a similar context via any tool, to prepare and hold presentations for my colleagues about the real meaning of inclusion. That's super specific, very good. And collaboration that will bring better results in the whole school community. Very nice ideas. In 2 months, what do we have? Again, to change attitudes and convictions, to go a bit deeper, implement some new policies, see some positive change, prepare exercises for all class, connect with people and groups that share the same ideas and bring them to the class for talks, prepare and distribute a leaflet for parents of all pupils about the right meaning of inclusion, and holding workshops with pupils about differences, which makes us richer. Get closer to cases that need to feel accepted, and use actively empathy. And lastly, in 6 months, we have new competencies and values. So the process is, it gets even deeper. Initiate school painting contest on the topic of inclusion, super cool, to increase even more this theme. I really like this idea. Creation of a more inclusive class group, design and implement the project and bring all those factors together, continue with the policies and evaluate, to organize competition in groups. And I will also start to make my students more sensitive about the above mentioned cases. Okay, so thank you very much for this. As I've said before, the mural is, I mean, you have the link, so if you want to still add something, feel free to do so. I'm just going to download it now, once with the results, and I will check it again later. Oops, sorry. And now it's our time to start closing. Again, we will have the mentoring session next Monday at 5 Central European time. If you want to further check and discuss and gather feedback of your ideas. And for the final part, I hope here you participate a little bit more. So we are going to have a Mentimeter. If you remember from previous sessions, that we use the Mentimeter, so you can either go to the web page that I just wrote, or you can go to this link and you should see some questions. Being the first one, how do you feel after the completion of the course? Let me know if anyone has issues with joining it. Okay, I see already some replies. So fine and awesome, that's very good. I'm happy you're not too tired yet. Awesome, more confident. We have happy too. Perfectly curious about what will happen in the future. Motivated, satisfied. That's very good. If you click normally on submit, you can go to the next one, to the next question, which is share with us one thing that you've learned throughout the course. Broaden horizons is the first answer that we got. You don't have to be, this is very beautiful. You don't have to be perfect to be inclusive. So we also have some other comments. Some people feel motivated, and some other things that people have learned are to share. And also that inclusion is about making learning accessible and possible for everyone. More things, new ways to be more inclusive, effective, better understanding of inclusion, how to be more inclusive, how to overcome the difficulties, change of policy, and also better understanding of inclusion strategies. I will be moving to the next slide, to the next question, because we still have a couple more, but I will come back to see if you have added something else, if you needed more time. We have some comments in the chat. Do we have a group, Facebook, LinkedIn, to stay in touch after this course, to keep in touch and to share experiences and news? We do not have that. I cannot share your contacts with you. What I can do is to explore the possibilities of that group. Maybe, I don't know, if we can include something about sharing your contacts in the evaluation form, or if we can create something. But we will let you know in the follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow or the day after. And okay, and we don't have more answers at the moment. So the next one is, share with us one thing you will apply in the future. This is, I mean, it can be just to talk to someone else about this, or to lobby for more inclusive education, or it can be to apply the social model of inclusion, for example, that we saw. So just one tiny thing at individual level. It doesn't need to be at school level or a big action plan or anything, but just one thing that you know that you will apply in the future. Okay, more practical policies. Good. Try to involve my colleagues in the inclusion game. This is always a challenge, so best of luck for this. More understanding exercises, and share all embracing ideology with others. Okay, let me check if there's any other answer from before. I will initiate schools painting contest about inclusion. Super looking forward to see how that goes. And commitment for practice. Okay. Again, I will stop sharing my screen. One more thing. Start to work to all actors of education. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen now because it's time. We have 1 minute left, but you can still contribute to the Mentimeter, and we will share that with you too. The last answer that we got was, I will talk more about inclusion in scientific conferences. Wow, really interesting too. Thank you very much. And now what I want to, what is left for the moment is to say a very big thank you to all of you. Thanks for joining all the different sessions. Thanks for your contributions. And thanks for being here every Monday afternoon online, which I know it can be very challenging with all the changes and the roller coaster that the last months have been. So big thank you. I also want to thank my colleague Dasha that was supporting technically every session, and that helped a lot, even if it was invisible work, but it was very helpful for me and for the sessions to happen. Irene, that is here. I will give you the floor in a minute. Irene, one second, and you can also close. And also Shan, I don't know if she's still here, but I want to thank her a lot for joining these last two sessions. And also Kike and Agnes that are not here today, but our speakers to also contribute to the course. Again, tomorrow, the day after, you will receive a very important email with the evaluation. We will send you also the certificates of your participation, but this will be done a bit later. And evaluation form, certificates will come a bit later, all the materials, and we will see how we can all keep in touch. And I think that's all for me. And now I give the floor to Irene if she wants to say any last words.
I hope they're not my last, but thank you on behalf of the InSchool project. And mentioned many times, you can find more resources on our site, inclusiveschools.net.
Thank you very much again. And well, again, maybe see some of you next Monday, and have a lovely evening.